Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to Discuss with Russ. I'm Russell Rivera, founder and president of Voice Wealth Management. This is episode 14 of our program, and my guest this afternoon is Michelina DiSibio of Let Us Be the Good. Our topic this afternoon is investing in your family's health. For those of you tuning in today for the first time, the Discuss with Russ series has focused on helping you get through the COVID crisis and start thinking and planning for what the world might look like as the crisis dissipates. Now that we can leave our homes, many of us, and see each other face to face again, we're still dealing with some issues, and we want to help you anticipate possible responses in society's behavior so you can be most prepared to succeed. My firm, Voice Wealth Management, primarily works with entrepreneurs, young professionals, and their families to help them get the most out of their money. While I'm a chartered financial analyst and certified financial planner, many also see me as their personal CFO and financial therapist, recognizing the psychological power of money in addition to using short-term and long-term planning to help you get the most out of every dollar you earn and use. Now on to our guest, Michelina DiSibio, or Mick as she likes to be called. She is a health and lifestyle entrepreneur, author, educator, and owner of a wellness franchise. Her story of transformation was published in May 2019 in the bestseller, The Art of Unlearning, Personal Stories on the Courage to Step Out of Your Comfort Zone. For 25 years, Mick has served in various leadership roles in the IT financing industry, beginning at IBM, before ditching her 9-to-5 to pursue her life's passion to help others achieve better health and prosperity. She's earned her BS in economics from Wharton at the University of Pennsylvania, and later graduated from the Institute for Integrative Nutrition and is board certified by the American Association of Drugless Practitioners. In her spare time, she enjoys cooking, exercising, and reading anything relating to personal growth. Most of all, she loves spending time with family, friends, and watching her 2 children play collegiate sports. As for housekeeping issues, there is a Q&A tab for asking questions, so please use that button to ask questions of Mick or myself. As this show is being recorded, we'll tell you how to get a recording at the end of the program. So Mick, thanks and welcome for joining, and thank you for joining us and welcome to the program.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Woo, we're off to a good start.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. It really is an honor to be a part of your show. So I appreciate being with you and your audience today.
Thanks. Mick, we've learned a lot more about COVID and the virus over the last several months from the health and wellness perspective, from issues around vitamin D to how this thing might get transmitted inside versus outside, to health conditions that some of us might have that really exacerbate the illness and possibly lead to worse outcomes for us. What changes are you seeing being made by your clients, and what recommendations are you making to people about how they can help prepare their bodies now as we get into fall, winter, and possible second wave?
Right. Well, thank you. So that's a great question. And I want to say that, my area of expertise and my focus when I'm working with people is to work on preventive care. So really looking at the factors and the pillars to a healthy, having a healthy, strong foundation to health. So if I may, Russ, I'm gonna share my screen because I have a slide I'd like to share with you and your viewers to kind of just give a visual. Can you see that?
Yes.
What can we do to be healthier? Okay. So here are the recommendations that I would really make, not just because we're in this really sort of tumultuous season, but these are things that really will help build a strong foundation to anything that we might encounter down the line. And so, we'll start with the idea of exercising, getting regular exercise. My recommendation is 30 minutes, at least 5 days a week. Trying to get your heart rate up, for example, whether it's walking or running, doing something of that nature, making sure you're getting proper sleep, quality sleep, right? So making sure on average 7 to 8 hours, but everybody's different. So your body best, but this is an average. And when we talk about sleep, I recommend making sure that we turn off our electronic devices. I know that's hard, but if we can try to do that 1 to 2 hours prior to getting to bed, it's going to really help our brain to sort of just start to, wind down and get ready. It's like preparing ourselves for a good night's sleep. Also making sure perhaps that we're not having, something to drink or eat. I usually recommend, 3 hours or so prior to going to bed, because your body needs time to rest and digest. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, the first two, I feel like especially that last little point there, I feel like I did that much better when I was younger.
Yeah,
Let me just, before we get into the rest of the slide, let me follow up with a question about exercise,
sure.
particularly referring to, gym. A lot of people like to go to gyms. They're not open.
Right.
What are people kind of doing?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So we've had to get creative, right? Certainly lots of options online. So you can go to wonderful websites like my favorite, healthylivingrevolution.com. You'll find some fitness ideas there. There are lots of YouTube videos that you can, different experts you can follow. But I say, given the season that we're in, especially here in the Northeast, let's get outside and enjoy the fresh air. Let's, my family, we've been doing hiking and walking and even playing like pickleball in the driveway and, trying to, actually it's brought us together more as a family. So, trying to do those kinds of things because we can't in all places be together right now. But there are also, I know, for example, I have friends that are doing online yoga courses, classes, and things like that. So looking for online communities right now is going to be really important. When it comes to the online thing, though, and I was going to talk about this a little bit later when we get into stress, and maybe this is a good segue, Russ, if that's okay,
Sure.
is when we talk about managing stress, looking for things that are going to help us really, again, as I mentioned earlier, unwind, right? Because we're in a very stressful environment right now. Many things are uncertain. We're concerned about our health. We're concerned about our financial future. What is the world going to look like? So it's really important, everyone, that we schedule the time to manage the stress, whether it is some form of yoga or meditation or whatever it might be. Now, a lot of the resources are online. So this is where, when we talk about the exercise piece, we want to also set boundaries. So I don't know if you have heard this term yet about Zoom fatigue, for example, right? This
Oh,
idea,
absolutely. Yeah.
right? Have you experienced it? I know I have.
I don't think I have, but I'm not spending 6 hours a day on this thing,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, in my field, I'm on Zoom a lot because this is now replacing the way we would, instead of being face to face with someone, in person, we're now, so making sure that you're setting boundaries. So, set that time aside to do whatever that stress management thing is for you, but then also, have the boundaries with the online stuff. Drinking enough water is really important for a strong foundation to health. This is what keeps the system working properly, right? We need things to flow in and out. So half your body weight in ounces of water is my recommendation. Okay, so the math is really easy. If you're active, you're sweating a lot, it's summertime now, you need more. Okay, so just listen to your body and really, be sure that you have a water bottle with you really just handy. It's really important to do that. And of course, safer products. I know that many of us, because of what's happening with the virus, we're using a lot of things like Clorox and different chemicals, right, to try and get ahead of the virus. So just be mindful, make sure you have good ventilation, your windows open, you have a fan on or something like that. Of course, you want to be careful about what you're putting on your skin, and sort of those kinds of things. And then, of course, my personal area of expertise is eating real food. This is where I spend a lot of time talking to my community, is about eating quality, fresh, clean, energizing food. And for me, it's focusing mostly on plants, helping families get more plants into their diet. So whether it's, going into a season of, let's hope we don't have, another second sort of crazy wave of coronavirus, but let's really focus on paying attention, really being attentive to these areas, because these are the things, if we can do this to the best of our ability, we're going to be best prepared to handle whatever comes our way, right? And that's the whole idea here.
So yeah, thanks for sharing that with us. And I know I'm not the healthiest guy on the planet. I look at 4 of those 6 things and I'm like, all right, I think I get to 7 hours of sleep. I've been actually doing a lot of online, online training and things like that. And I've been working with somebody who not only is doing like online trading with me and my son, but also like doing daily stretch classes that are supposed to
Okay.
maybe, for those of us who are sitting like this, hunched over our chairs for 7 hours a day, something to get moving. And then obviously drinking water. That's not me. My wife drinks enough water for both of us,
That's
amongst
good.
other things. But yeah, no, of course, and this is important. Let me follow up from that. I know you're talking about eating real food. One of the things, some bigger voices in media who are not necessarily health and wellness people like yourself, though maybe tangentially, are
Okay.
really talking a lot about sugar
Mm,
and potentially its role in this. So, for example, I can certainly say to you from my personal perspective, a lot of times when I'm actually thirsty, my body craves something sweet, and I end up going for that sometimes. At least I'm now trying to make that something sweet, something like fruit. But
there you go.
right, like, so
Yeah.
what's your experience or knowledge in trying to help people with that, and what sugar might do to the body in terms of and helping people? Not that I'm saying I'm doing a great job
Right.
doing it
No, but that's a
myself.
great point. But you're bringing up a really great point. And one of the points I wanted to make here is that, for many of us, when we are stressed, that's sort of the craving is to go for sugar, right? So now, again, we're in this environment where it's like everything is amped up, right? So the idea here would be, yes, we want to, as much as possible, avoid sugary processed foods. What we know is that sugar feeds disease, right? So things like cancer and other inflammatory diseases, they feed on sugar, right? So we want to starve the disease as much as possible. So if you do have this craving for something sweet, my recommendation would always be to go for some sort of natural source, of course, right? So an apple, maybe a banana, or something of that nature, so that you are making a wonderful fruit smoothie, perhaps, that has lots of fiber in it, so that you're also, the fiber is going to help with the uptake of the sugar, so you're not having a big spike in your sugar. So and when I say a smoothie, for example, I'm not saying I want you to juice it and take the fiber out, but you would take like a Vitamix blender or something like that and put the entire fruit in there. I have a wonderful plant powder that I use. It has 14 different plants in it. It's wonderful because it's full of fiber, but it satisfies the craving, if you will, for the sugary, because it has natural stevia in it, which is a plant. Also you want to make sure you're choosing organic as much as possible, right? Because that's the cleanest sort of food that we have. Plants, of course, is something I always recommend trying to get more of in your diet. All the colors of the rainbow. This is really important because many of us consider ourselves, healthy eaters. And I'm sure we are, many of us, making healthy choices, but are we getting enough colors of the rainbow, the variety? So really think about that, because every food in nature is bringing something special to the table. So, plants, seeds, lean poultry, and wild-caught salmon, for example, are two of my favorite foods to choose also. And then another idea would be, consider taking control of your own food supply. And what do I mean by that? What if you grew your own produce year-round, Russ? If I told you you could grow your own produce year-round, indoors and outdoors, would that be something you might consider to take more control of your health and the quality of your food, right? Because when you grow it, you know exactly what's going into it.
Fair enough. That
Right.
sounds interestingly enough. And I think once they finish the construction on our building, as I hear going on outside right now, that might actually be an option. It's something we have.
Yeah. Well, in the unit you see behind me here, this is the way I grow my food. This is a vertical tower garden. It's empty now because I've harvested all the food, but I have seeds that I'm, nurturing so that I can put them into the tower. So
And I'm
those
going
are
to go
some
ahead.
ways.
I was
Yeah,
going to say, I'm
just
going to tell everybody that we've gone completely off script here. So just so you know, this is a completely fun and maybe we'll get back on script, but that's amazing that we're having this conversation. You were mentioning the smoothies. I think one of the things, coming into the whole pandemic, even I was smart enough to go out and just buy multivitamins for myself because I just didn't know what was coming down the pike. I mean, I was expecting we'd be locked inside for 3 weeks and all I could make was kind of pasta and chicken, right? And like, what else were we going to be able to do if we were going to have our doors welded shut, or essentially welded shut. So definitely, seeing that we can do that, I made smoothies a big part of what I've been doing, whole fruit, just throw berries in there, throw banana, throw yogurt, and throw some chia seeds. And that's been something I'm trying to do multiple times a week.
And think about green veggies too, for example, like spinach. You won't even taste spinach in a smoothie. It doesn't have, so, you know, that's another great one to throw in there. You're getting the extra phytonutrition that's in there, but you're not really getting the negative side of the taste. There really is no taste to it.
Fair enough. So something to consider if I can get other people in my family to partake as well.
Just don't tell them, throw it in. But I make it for my family. I make my daughter a chocolate smoothie every morning. And one of these days, if and when the city ever opens up, she'll move into an apartment there. And I said to her, what are you going to do? You've got to learn how to make these smoothies. She's like, Mom, I don't want to know what's in the smoothie. I just know it tastes good. You make it. So I don't want to know what's in there. Well, she is getting a lot more than she thinks, she is. And it's all good stuff. So
what other dietary tips do you have for people watching that we didn't cover yet?
Well, and again, so I really believe in bio-individuality, which is just this idea that, everybody really needs to listen to their bodies and see what feels right for them. So having said that, what I recommend is trying different things that we know for many people can help them feel better. So for example, try omitting dairy, try omitting gluten for at least 10 days. Actually, my colleagues and I run a 10-day challenge once a month where we help people to try to build these habits, right? Give it a try. What we find is that when people avoid dairy and gluten, for example, those are just two things, they tend to feel better. And what do I mean by that? People report that they feel less gassy, less foggy in terms of their thinking, less bloated, and just have more energy. So I know from my own personal story, Russ, this goes back 10 years ago when I first made the conscious decision to pay attention to my health. I started avoiding dairy and gluten, and I was amazed at what started to happen for me. Now, this is me, and everybody, as I said, is different. But I know from talking to other people that many people have similar experiences. Everything started to change for me. I started to, I came off over-the-counter meds that I was taking for constant sinus infections. I mean, I haven't had a sick visit in a lot of years. And this again is unscripted because we didn't get into this earlier, but for me this whole idea of health is so important, taking control of your health. My family history involves the loss of my dad when I was 5 years old. We lost him to a heart condition, and as difficult as that was, as I got into adulthood, I started to become really aware of what was happening to my parents' generation. And I know, and my heritage, is Italian. So know what that menu looks like. Right? I don't
want to stereotype you, Nick.
You know what that menu looks like. Well, any Italian restaurant, right? Yeah. You're going to get lots of really delicious food. But the fact is, it's not all really very healthy for you if you're having it consistently, right? So, so we need to make...
It's interesting that you're saying that. And again, now we're off a completely different direction. But I think about I even just think about Italy in this entire crisis, how obviously there were so many people who were in their 80s, in their 90s. Like they always say that something about Italy, whether it's the food or genetics or whatever, leads to longevity in that population. So, what does that mean here?
Well, it's interesting. So you're on a great point. So you have to, I don't know if you're familiar with something called the blue zones.
No,
the blue zones. Yeah. So the blue zones, for anyone who's interested in longevity, this is basically a study on longevity. It was done by Dan Buettner. You can find the TED Talk. It's wonderful. Sardinia in Italy is one of the, I think there are 7 or 9 or so blue zones, where they have the highest concentration of centenarians. So in those pockets, what you're seeing is people that are living a primarily plant-based lifestyle. They have community support, there's spirituality involved, and eating off the land and so on, extended family scenarios. that sort of thing. There is some red wine also that's a little helpful, so don't discount that. That's good. And I always tell people, that's grapes, so that's a fruit, that's okay. So it's all right to have that. So I think it depends on where you are, what region you're in perhaps, but the way we read in general, Italian menus here are very heavy in carbs and cheese and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. So let's go a little bit more into you were mentioning de-stress and how exercise and all of that. With gyms closed, we touched on it a little bit before. You and your family are playing pickleball, getting outside. What other tips and tricks do you have for people who are more cautious about being out and about, particularly in more urban environments, and getting the exercise they need?
Yeah, so here's where technology may help, right? Because I feel that being a part of a community, especially when you're trying to engage in an exercise program, having a buddy or somebody to keep you accountable is really helpful. So, attending some sort or creating even your own online Zoom exercise time, right? And again, I feel like this is so important that you schedule it into your calendar. Just like you would schedule a meeting with a client or a doctor's appointment or something like that, to really make the exercise piece a part of your day. But because we are sort of, again, not able to get to the gyms, using the technology is a way we can connect, virtually, or getting, again, trying to get your family involved and doing something together indoors or, out on your patio or whatever. So you don't necessarily have to be out and about, to be exercising. There are things you can do at home. I would agree, perhaps, it's different, right? It's not maybe as fun as it would be to be in person with people, but right now we have to do the next best thing. And one of my favorites, for example, for anyone out there who might be interested in yoga, is Yoga with Adriene. So she has a very big following on YouTube. I think she has some really great videos on there for people to take advantage of and enjoy.
Thanks, Mick. Just so you know, anybody who's watching who has a question, please use the Q&A tab. We did have somebody reach out into the chat, and that's fine. That's appreciated. But use the Q&A tab so we can just make sure that we are able to address your question very more easily. So thank you for that. Another question here for you, Mick, at least this one from me. With spikes in cases and in other densely populated areas around the country, the world, so we're hearing about more cases now, obviously not to the extent that we're seeing here, but in Japan or Israel or I guess Germany may be going up again. And then obviously what we're seeing in the South here, it would be unsurprising if our area in the Northeast deals with further limitations, increasing illness again, maybe if they open schools, we'll have to deal with this again, obviously, with all the questions that we all have surrounding what's coming down the pike in the coming months. How are you, your clients, and your family preparing from a mental standpoint? Is it old hat since we did it in the spring? Do you think there's a different set of challenges we have to meet? Are we suffering with like some sort of fatigue? I was reading an article, and I know I'm now talking instead of asking, but like I was dealing with an article from a parent or a parenting article, basically just unnumb to this already. Like not, they're just, too tired of being on edge, kind of thing.
Right.
Where do you come from there?
Right. So, I'm glad you bring up this question about the mental aspect, because it's really important. We have to think about mental health and be really, really, again, mindful about, how we are fueling even our minds. Mostly when people think about health, they think a lot about, the physical sort of health and some of the things that we talked about earlier in terms of exercise, et cetera. But it's really important to be mentally, sort of aware of what you're doing. And so what I do and what I recommend to my community is gratitude, expressing gratitude every single day. I like to begin my day with gratitude, and I end my day with gratitude. I think it is so important to make sure that you are taking care of your thoughts. So if you find yourself going down a rabbit hole where there's this, sense of negativity. And it's easy to do this. I totally get it, right? Because every time you turn on the TV, there's a lot of negativity out there on social media and so on. So, but really try to catch yourself and focus on what's going well in your day. It could be that you have a roof over your head. It could be that you have a car to drive, you have a friend to call. It could be that you're healthy. Whatever those things are, I recommend journaling. Write down what you're grateful for. Also, take this time to get excited to learn new things, maybe, right? Think about some things, plan now. I'm a planner. I like to plan ahead. So what happens if we have to go into some sort of a lockdown mode? I mean, let's hope we don't. But what happens if we do? Maybe having some plans around projects you want to work on, things that you've been tabling that perhaps now you can, DIY type projects, maybe planning even online events with your family. I know one of the events that I am considering planning in my work community is someone came to me because she runs online, bingo events, right? So whatever it might be, maybe you have planned some kind of a game night or something it's important to have something positive to look forward to. So think about what those things might be. And again, when I talk about technology, be wise about how you use it and make sure you have those boundaries so that you're not, exhausting yourself by all the screen time.
And I talking about planning, it's like I've had this conversation with my family. I've had this conversation with others who I've talked about. It's like, I feel for me personally, this is the first time you can actually plan a few weeks out.
Yes.
We finally got there.
Yeah.
Right. I could say, I think I know what I can do the rest of this month. I can make a plan.
Right. Well, so right there, Russ, that's a positive.
Yeah.
When you think about it, for us, it's like we have 2 young adult children. My daughter's 22, just graduated from college virtually. That wasn't ideal, but it is what it is. And then my son, finished his college freshman year at home. And as much of a disappointment as that was, we tried to find the silver lining. We got time together that we wouldn't otherwise have had. And it has, I have to say, opened other doors. It's gotten us to become creative, right? It's pushed us a little bit. And guess what happens when we push ourselves a little bit?
We respond.
Magic happens. Right. We start creativity. We start to expand our thinking a little bit. We're thinking about how to do things in new ways and cooking. And, the kitchen never stops here. I don't know how it is at your house, but it's like, it just never stops because we've got all this going on. So
listen, my son spent his spring break in April making all of our meals.
Great. That's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Whatever a 10-year-old could make. He's 11 now, but whatever a 10-year-old could make, he was making.
Well, that's great. And again, there's a lot to be learned from that. And I do, again, I try to focus on the positive. I love the idea that, it really has encouraged us all to think about ways that we can, I think this is a great time actually to be teaching our kids about how to handle, adversity, right? We don't always realize that they're watching what we're doing. They know that expression on your face when you're stressed. They know exactly they get a vibe from you. And so as parents, we have the ability now to sort of teach them, well, what do we do when we're in a stressful situation? All right, we're going to take a deep breath and we're going to look at all the things that are working right now. And we're going to be really grateful that we're not in some other situation right now. And so I think it's a really great teaching moment right now, what we're going through as families and as a country and just everything. So let's try to maybe embrace that. And, I do think eventually this will end and hopefully we'll all come out of this, yeah.
So let me just take off, maybe we'll come back to that portion, but I just want to take care of this question that we got from the Q&A tab for those watching. What is the easiest way you know of to get that rainbow of color if kids are picky eaters?
If kids are well, so there are products that I recommend that would be very appropriate for that. And I don't want to be like an infomercial here to do that. I'm happy to explain it one-to-one for anyone who wants to learn more about it. But there is a wonderful program out there where parents can actually sponsor and give their children a free supply of a concentrated form of fruits and vegetables for 4 consecutive years. So what this company does is they take the fruits and veggies, it's crushed and dried, and the concentrated powders go into either a gelatin form or a capsule. That's one way, but that's a very economic way to do it. But I say, offer the variety on the table. Put that out for the kids, put out blueberries and, raspberries and pineapple, all the colors, because visually it's really beautiful what nature provides, right? So there are some wonderful ways to supplement what goes on the plate. And I'm happy to explain, these other programs and things that are available to families if they choose. They can just reach out to me directly.
Great. And we'll get that information later.
Sure.
I think that's a good point. I mean, kind of having had more meal, every meal almost be a family meal at this point. I think it's really kind of important. It's like, to some extent, at least in terms of dealing with my son, not that we're great by any means, but it comes down to actually sort of limiting their choices.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, it's like, we're going to have a salad with dinner. We set salad on the table and I'm eating my salad, but I learned 20 years ago to eat like, I was the road runner and somebody was going to take it from me. And when I finished my salad and I went on to my main, my son stopped eating his salad and he's actually a slow eater. So like, there is something to be even said for that, but not even putting it on the table and saying, no, we're not bringing out the main course until the salad is there.
Mm-hmm.
Or when it comes to dessert, like making sure people see it. Like how much food do we leave in our refrigerators and our cupboards that we don't remember we even have because
right,
we don't
true.
see it.
Yes.
That might generally be a better choice. So
right.
That's something that I see
Yeah.
at least am guilty of, and I see it, and it's a struggle that I deal with for me and my family in our everyday lives.
Right. But that's a good point, Russ. Having good options in the house, just eliminate the options that aren't healthy, and then your kids will only have this to choose from, so that's a great strategy, is just keep a clean cupboard. You can have lots of options, but just make sure they're healthy. You're keeping some healthy choices around.
Yeah, and it's good for us too, just having it there and saying, oh yeah, I can have that. I see that. That's there. I bought that for a reason.
Right, exactly.
And then it might yield to something when you're looking for something.
Mm-hmm.
We are still taking we may get another last question here. You can use the Q&A tab. If our previous questioner wants to follow up, that's fine as well. So I guess kind of back to the elements of the stress of the situation. Again, you're dealing with it in terms of helping people be grateful. How is let's see, we got a question. Look at that. I don't know if this question is for me or for you, Mick. Do you ever eat cake, cookies, etc.?
Do I ever eat cake?
I know the answer for me is yes. That's easy.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. My birthday's coming on Saturday. I will definitely be eating cake and cookies. Absolutely. There's no question. Listen, I think life has to be fun, right? So my general recommendation is 80% of the time, we want to try to stay on track. 20-ish% of the time, we let our hair down, right? And we have a good, so absolutely, you have to have those splurges. But here's what I'll tell you, and this is true for me, and again, it may not be true for everybody, but it's true for me and a lot of people that I know, that once you start to adopt healthier eating habits, like eating more plants, like eating cleaner, less processed foods, what happens is the chemistry of your body changes. So maybe 15 years ago, I would have eaten a piece of cake like this big. Now I'll be happy with a little slice like this, because after a couple of bites, what happens is my body's like, whoa, Mick, time out. That is really sweet. Okay. So my body has adapted and adjusted. So yeah, I'll have it, but I just don't have as much as the old me would have had. So you can still have your treats.
You know,
It's okay.
you remind me of a funny story that that I'm happy to share here, that my wife did to me. And we were at visiting friends for a weekend. It's about 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And I guess they had this Costco sized pie.
Okay.
And,
Oh, those Costco's dangerous.
yeah. And so it had been quarter eaten already. And the host was sitting there and saying, ready to cut. Is like, so how big a piece should I cut you? Right. Like just
Right.
trying to show me with the fork, what should I do? And, there's 3/4 of the pie. And my wife goes, no, he'll have that.
Yeah, the whole thing. No need to
No,
cut it.
it's fine. That's enough right there.
We don't need slices.
So yeah. So we were talking about handling stress. And so, let me ask a little bit more about your story, because, you made this change in your life in terms of your diet. So could you tell me a little bit more about whether it was we asked, our questioner asked about cookies and cake, but you're also talking about getting rid of dairy and gluten. How much is that out of your system right now? And what exactly did it do for you? I mean, I've heard all sorts of weird diets that have other things. I've heard diets that have supposedly worked for people where all they eat beef. I mean, I've heard all sorts of things. So what about this is making it work for you?
Right. So that's a great question. That's why I talk about bioindividuality. It was something that I learned about when I was in nutrition school, at the IIN, in the IIN program. For me, it all started, as I said, going back, gosh, it's almost 10 years ago now. I was diagnosed with something called osteopenia, which is the precursor to osteoporosis, which is loss of bone density. And this is something that happens more commonly in older people. So you may have heard of stories of, elderly who fall, they have a break, and then it leads to other things, right? That's where you see the osteoporosis, because the bones are brittle. So this was a very shocking, sort of diagnosis for me, because I was very young to be diagnosed. And as I mentioned earlier, with this growing up without my dad and the passing of losing him at such a young age, this was really a wake-up call for me, because I did not want to lead a sick life. And what was happening in my corporate career is, like many people, we work long hours, we travel, we're just giving it all ends, right? Up early, late, this, that, and not eating well. And so the stress at all, I think, took a toll. I think it played a role in the diagnosis. What I've learned in my experience in nutrition school is that milk, for example, cow's milk, can actually lead or contribute to an osteoporosis. I know this sounds contradictory, because we've seen the commercials, drink milk for stronger bones and all this. But in my case, actually, I have had a trusted, health professional, my functional medicine doctor, Tamara Sachs. She's in New Milford, Connecticut. She's awesome. Taught me that when you have, that the milk, because it's acid forming, it actually was working against me. And my bones were leaching the minerals that it needed to sort of stay healthy. So that was, for me, a real aha moment, because I thought, oh my gosh, we used to have milk delivered. We had gallons of milk. Between my brother and I, we drank gallons of milk growing up, cow's milk. So for me, once I made that change, that was one change, Russ, was I omitted cow's milk. And then I did also omit the gluten. What we know is that for many people, those are inflammatory foods. They can cause some disturbance in the gut lining and so on. And so, again, in my experience, what I have found is that when people join us in our 10-day challenge and they omit the gluten and the dairy, most people report that they feel better. They feel lighter. The other thing that was so interesting that I noticed for me was that have you ever had this experience where if you drink a glass of milk, have you ever had that sort of like goopy, mucusy sort of feel in the back of your throat?
Yeah,
or no?
I'm not much of like a just plain milk drinker. So I'm not accustomed to that.
Yeah.
But I have heard like that
Yeah.
drinking milk or having dairy can help create an excess of mucus. Other than that, and now we're getting really, grotesque.
Right, we're getting deep. I know, we're getting really deep here, but here's the thing. So, and I'll end on this with regard to the milk and all that. But what I found was that when I omitted the meal, so leading up to this point in time, 10 or so years ago, one of my main ailments, if you will, was that I had a lot of sinus infections, ear infections. As a child, my mother would say, I was constantly in and out of the doctor's office for ear infections. Well, again, the eye-opening experience for me was once I cut the dairy out, guess what? I never had a sinus infection again.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it wasn't the only thing. I also omitted the red meat and I started to eat more plants. So all of these things together, I believe, made a change. I mean, I was at 41 years old and I had a doctor who said, I recommend we remove your tonsils. You need a tonsillectomy because you're getting sick all the time. Do you know what that's like as an adult? I've heard tonsillectomy as an adult is like torture. And I was like, okay.
All I know is you'd be eating ice cream and Jell-O for 2 weeks. I don't know. Some people would sign up for that.
I know, maybe they would. I wasn't one of them. I wasn't one of them willing to sign up. I was the one that said, there is no way on earth I am doing this. I am going to figure out what is wrong with my body. Why am I getting sick all the time? So anyway, that was my story and what worked for me. It's worked for many others. I welcome people to try, see what works for you. And do it in a supportive group where, you have people cheering for you. And that's part of what our community at Let Us Be the Good offers, is the community support, the fun, the ideas, and so on. So welcome everyone to check us out.
Well, this has been one fun conversation, especially as we've gone off into the weeds in every different possible combination. So this has definitely been one of the more fun conversations I've had here. So thank you for that.
Awesome.
Please tell us how those who are watching and listening can contact you.
Yeah, so I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm even on Instagram. That's my newest. I've ventured into Instagram. I'm actually also hosting a health webinar tonight, Russ. So if anyone is interested, 7:30 tonight, Eastern time. So if anyone out there is interested in learning more about my company and our community, just message me and I can send you the details for that. But I am happy to meet with anybody one-to-one. I love hearing about what other people are doing, what your audience is passionate about. And I do have a large network, as do you. So if I don't personally have an answer to something that you're looking for, I might be able to introduce you to someone who does. And I truly love helping people to make connections. So thank you again. This has been a lot of fun. It's been a pleasure to be with you and your audience. I really appreciate the time.
So you can reach out to Michelina, and that's Michelina, right?
That's
And
right.
DiSibio is DISIBIO. You could look for her on, like she said, Instagram, Facebook, Let Us Be the Good, as well as on LinkedIn as well. So that's great. So thank you for that. And thank you for joining us today on Discuss with Russ. For those of you interested, can reach me at Russell, RUSSELL.Rivera @voicewealth.com, or just give us a call at 646-630-0980. We will be sending a follow-up email with the link to the recording. Our previous episodes are on www.voicewealth.com/blog. This one will be there. It takes us about a week to get it up, so please bear with us. You can also view all of our videos, not only just Discuss with Russ episodes, but our Insta blogs and just kind of what we do and why we do. Vic, that should mean something to you.
Yes.
On the Voice Wealth Management YouTube channel. For our upcoming programs, we are scheduled right through the month of August. Next week, July 22nd, really special episode. We're going to be joined by Jason Stein. He's an assistant scouting director with the New York Mets. He's going to talk about the comeback of baseball, talk about what sports mean for the country in this time and coming back. On July 29th, we'll have a psychotherapist, Justin Leoy, on to discuss how kids and families are dealing with the challenges of living in a COVID world. Mick, from our conversation today, you could have just introed both of them. August 5th, we're going to have Anthony Verna of Verna Law to talk about talking about opportunities in business and intellectual property law. August 12th, we're going to have Jack Craven talking about taxes. And August 19th, we're going to have Aaron Shipp of the Ivy Edge to talk about the changing landscape of college. So, again, you want to register for any of those webinars, reach out to me again, russell.rivera@voicewealth.com. Check your email inboxes for registration emails. Those will be coming to you. Thank you for joining us today, and watch for the recording next week, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
All right.